You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio, The Vulnerability War, Weakness as a Fatal Risk. Chapter 1. The Hidden Danger of Exposure, Awareness Before Courage. There is a place inside all of us that we guard more fiercely than any treasure vault. It is the sanctum of our deepest truths, our most potent desires, and yes, our most debilitating fears. This inner world holds the raw material of who we truly are, unfiltered and unprotected. To let someone else see into that space, to grant them full access, feels like the ultimate gamble. It's an act that is at once alluring and absolutely terrifying. This impulse to guard, this deep-seated need for concealment, is not a flaw in your character. It's a primal, highly intelligent self-preservation mechanism. It exists because exposure, as we instinctively know, is dangerous. The danger isn't simply emotional discomfort. It is the risk of a true, consequential wound. Think about the energy it takes to keep a secret or to maintain a carefully constructed outward image. It is exhausting, but we do it because the alternative feels worse. The moment we open the door to that inner sanctum, we are creating an emotional liability. We're handing over a measure of our personal power, an unseen piece of leverage, to another person. And once it's out there, it can never truly be taken back. This is the core of the vulnerability paradox. Everyone tells you that to connect, you must open up, that to find true intimacy, you must be seen. But the hidden truth, the one we feel in our gut, is that being seen is also an invitation for betrayal, manipulation, or cold, dismissive rejection. The risk is profound. When we reveal a deep hope, a tender fear, or a genuine aspiration, we are putting a sharp edge of ourselves, our true, beating heart, directly into the hands of another person. They can choose to hold it gently, or they can choose to use it as a weapon, and you can never truly know which choice they will make until it is too late. So, let's step away from the simplistic, motivational slogans about being brave and just letting go. That kind of advice is built on a foundation of wishful thinking, not on the hard-won wisdom of experience. We must begin not with courage, but with awareness. We need to dissect the nature of the risk itself. What exactly are you protecting? You are guarding against three primary threats that come with emotional exposure. The first is betrayal. This is the violation of trust where your shared secret, your exposed weakness, is weaponized. It's the moment your private pain becomes public gossip or a tool used to diminish your standing. Betrayal is a deep, agonizing stab because it doesn't just hurt. It proves your gut instinct to remain guarded was correct, reinforcing a powerful desire to retreat into total isolation. The second threat is manipulation. Once someone knows your deepest longing, the thing you are striving for, the fear that keeps you awake at night, they have a point of access. They can use that knowledge to subtly guide your actions, to influence your decisions, and to get what they want from you. If they know your deepest insecurity, they can exploit it to keep you compliant or off balance. This is often far more subtle and insidious than outright betrayal, and it can leave you feeling subtly controlled and deeply resentful without knowing exactly why. The third, and perhaps most common, danger is dismissal or indifference. You offer up a genuine, meaningful piece of yourself, something tender and profound, and it is met with a shrug, a change of subject, or a failure to grasp the depth of what you have shared. This isn't an attack, but it feels like one because it makes your inner world feel small, inconsequential, or even absurd. It's the wound of being misunderstood, which, for a soul that feels deeply, can be a freezing, devastating experience. It teaches you that your truest self is best kept hidden because the outside world may not have the capacity or the care to handle it. Our instinctive guard is a powerful psychic shield built up over a lifetime of small and large hurts. It learns quickly. The nervous energy you feel right before you're about to say something truly personal, that slight catch in your throat, the tightening in your chest, that is your internal alarm system screaming for caution. It is a voice we should learn to listen to, not immediately attempt to override with some prescribed act of boldness. The truth is, True power lies in discretion, not in indiscriminate sharing. Many people mistake theatrical, public oversharing for genuine vulnerability, but there is a profound difference. Oversharing is often a performance, a way to elicit attention or sympathy without revealing the truly dangerous parts of the self. Genuine exposure, however, is quiet, intentional, and deeply selective. It is a transfer of power, and it must be treated with the gravity it deserves. Before you take a single step toward opening up, you need to cultivate a brutal self-awareness about what you stand to lose and gain. It is about surveying the landscape before charging across it. Ask yourself, what piece of my inner world am I considering revealing? Is it a genuine vulnerability, a weakness, or is it a hidden strength I'm trying to camouflage? What is the cost if this information is misused? What is the benefit if it is received with grace? This process of assessment is not cynical. It is sovereign. It means you are taking responsibility for your own emotional security, rather than passively hoping others will treat you well. When you guard your heart, you are not being weak or fearful. You are being strategic. You are acknowledging the sharp, dangerous reality of the world, that not everyone is worthy of the deepest parts of you, and not every environment is safe for your softest truths. The journey we are embarking on is not about tearing down your defenses. It is about learning to operate the sophisticated machinery of those defenses with precision and intent. It is about knowing the difference between a protective wall and a restrictive prison. For now, understand that the impulse to guard your heart is a form of deep wisdom. It is the wisdom that understands the enormous, transformative power contained within your vulnerability, and therefore, the enormous risk of releasing it carelessly. You are a repository of power, and this power must be handled with the utmost respect. The courage to expose yourself must always be preceded by the unflinching awareness of the stakes. Do not rush to open the lock. First, study the mechanism of the lock itself, and understand the value of the treasure it holds. Take a moment now to acknowledge the depth of the inner world you protect. Feel the power of the things you keep hidden, the pain, the ambition, the love. This power is yours. Before you can truly transform, you must first truly see what you are protecting and why. The first step to true strength is respecting the danger you have managed to survive by being guarded. Let that wisdom settle within you. Chapter 2. The Cost of Concealment. How hiding weakness drains energy. The impulse to guard the self, as we've established, is a natural and often necessary defense. It has kept you intact. But while the protective shield of concealment may prevent immediate, sharp wounds, it often comes with a subtle, debilitating price. This price is paid in energy, authenticity, and missed opportunities for profound connection. The very mechanism designed to save you can, over time, begin to suffocate the life force it was meant to preserve. Think of concealment as a constant, low-level emotional muscle contraction. You are holding back, editing, deflecting, and managing an outward persona that doesn't quite match the complex reality inside. This requires a profound and continuous expenditure of psychic energy. Imagine holding a heavy shield 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when no visible threat is present. You become perpetually braced, always ready for the attack that may or may not come. This constant state of inner vigilance is utterly draining. It steals the energy that could be flowing into creativity, deep thought, pleasure, or ambitious action. Instead, that resource is perpetually diverted to maintaining the emotional facade. It's the exhaustion that comes not from working too hard, but from trying too hard to appear a certain way, unflappable, perfectly controlled, or entirely self-sufficient. This relentless effort to hide any perceived weakness ultimately makes you weaker, not stronger, because your vitality is tied up in the act of hiding. One of the most insidious costs of this deep concealment is isolation. The paradox is crushing. You hide your true self to protect it from harm, but in doing so, you push away the very connections that could provide strength, solace, and true understanding. When you present only a highly curated, impenetrable version of yourself, people can only connect with that polished surface. They may admire the strength you display, but they can never truly know the depth of the person underneath. This leaves you feeling profoundly alone, even when surrounded by others. Isolation feeds a destructive cycle. The less known you are, the more you assume you cannot be known or accepted. This reinforces the belief that your inner world is fundamentally unsafe to share, leading to even deeper concealment. You end up viewing all relationships through a lens of potential risk, seeing others less as partners in life and more as potential security breaches. The cost here is the loss of genuine, unburdened intimacy, the kind of soul-nourishing connection that comes when two people mutually drop their guards. Furthermore, concealment stunts growth. True personal evolution often springs from confronting what we wish to hide most: our failures, our deepest insecurities, the patterns we can't seem to break. When you keep these aspects hidden, even from yourself in moments of reflection, you deny them the light necessary for transformation. The things we hide fester in the shadows. They become sources of unconscious reaction and control your decisions from behind the curtain. Imagine having a difficult, complex feeling, say, a deep fear of inadequacy, and never allowing anyone to see it, never naming it aloud to a trusted soul. By concealing it, you deny yourself the perspective that comes from external insight. You also deny the opportunity to process the emotion through shared experience, which is one of the most powerful tools for dismantling emotional burdens. Instead, the feeling is packed down, where it gains density and weight, becoming a heavier and heavier personal load. The energy drain is also manifest in loss of spontaneity. When you are constantly vetting every word, gesture, and reaction against the fear of exposure, you lose the ability to simply be. Every interaction becomes a performance, a strategic encounter. Your responses are careful and measured, rather than fluid and authentic. This robs life of its texture, its ease, and its joy. Authentic life is messy, and genuine joy is often unrestrained. The concealed self cannot afford either. Consider the cost in professional and creative life. The most potent and resonant work, whether in business, art, or leadership, often comes from a place of deep personal truth. The things you try hardest to hide are frequently the sources of your unique perspective, your deepest compassion, or your most radical insight. By concealing them, you are censoring your most valuable resource, your distinct human experience. You produce work that is safe, competent, and acceptable, but perhaps lacking the visceral punch that comes from true, unguarded self-expression. You trade the potential for transformative impact for the comfort of remaining safely in the background. The key to escaping this trap is to recognize that hiding weakness does not eliminate it. It only makes it heavier. The weakness remains, but now it has a secret burden attached, which is the sheer effort of the camouflage. To begin reversing this energy drain, you must initiate a process of internal audit. Identify the specific emotions or experiences you are spending the most energy concealing. Is it anger about a past injustice? Is it the fear of failing at a new venture? Is it the quiet desperation for approval? Name it, not to expose it to the world yet, but simply to acknowledge the labor it is costing you. Understand this. The protective shell you built saved you, but now, it may be time to strategically open a few controlled air vents. You do not have to dismantle the entire structure overnight, or ever. The shift is about moving from automatic, reactive concealment to intentional, strategic choice. It is recognizing that the energy you pour into maintaining a perfect image could be reinvested into building a genuinely powerful, resilient, and connected life. The decision to hold back is a choice, but the burden of constant concealment is a consequence, and it is silently and relentlessly eroding your personal resources. The true strength is not in never needing help or never having a fear. True strength is in knowing the cost of denial and choosing, with clear intention, when and to whom you will reveal the truth, thereby reclaiming the enormous energy spent on hiding it. Reflect now on where your energy is truly going. Is it fueling your passions, or is it merely propping up an image? Allow yourself to feel the weight of what you are carrying alone. That recognition is the first, vital step towards setting it down and reclaiming your sovereign energy. This is not about being reckless. It is about recognizing that your life force is too valuable to be wasted on constant defense. Chapter 3. The Paradox of Strength and Weakness. When openness becomes a strategic choice. We have acknowledged the very real dangers of exposure and the silent, exhausting tax of constant concealment. Now, we must move past the binary thinking that labels vulnerability as simply weakness and guardedness as the only path to strength. True mastery lies in recognizing the profound, often hidden paradox. That openness deployed with discernment can be one of the most powerful strategic tools in your arsenal. The conventional definition of strength is a hard, impenetrable exterior, never flinching, never needing, never showing effort. But this definition is brittle. A structure that cannot flex will eventually shatter under the right pressure. True, enduring strength isn't about being made of stone. It's about being deeply rooted and resilient, capable of selective adaptation. And this is where the strategic deployment of vulnerability comes in. To utilize openness strategically, you must first understand that not all revelations are created equal. There is a massive difference between a reactive, emotional spill of insecurity and a measured, intentional disclosure that advances your goals or deepens a necessary bond. The difference is control and purpose. When you choose to reveal a carefully selected truth, you are performing an act of calculated risk. This is not about being passive. It's about active influence. A strategic revelation of a weakness, for example, can instantly disarm an opponent or a critic. If you acknowledge your own potential shortcoming before someone else can point it out, you seize ownership of the narrative. You demonstrate radical self-awareness, which is a key component of leadership and psychological power. You effectively communicate, "Yes, I know this about myself, and I am still standing, still proceeding." This preemptive ownership strips others of their leverage. Furthermore, strategic openness is a powerful lever for building trust. Trust is the currency of all profound relationships and successful endeavors. And what is the fastest way to build trust? It's not through promises or declarations. It's through a small, genuine act of shared humanity. When you expose a sliver of your true self, you are extending an invitation to another person, a sign of respect that says, "I see you as worthy of my truth." This selective sharing creates an immediate, asymmetrical connection. The other person often feels compelled to reciprocate with their own truth, leading to a rapid deepening of the bond. This is highly strategic, particularly in complex situations, negotiations, or partnerships. By moving the relationship from the superficial to the substantial, you create an alliance built on mutual understanding, rather than just transactional agreement. The goal isn't to gain sympathy, it's to build the kind of depth that makes the partnership stronger and more resistant to external pressure. This approach requires an absolute mastery of timing and scale. The power of strategic openness is lost if you overshare, or if you share prematurely. The revelation must be relevant to the context and proportional to the level of trust already established. Think of it as opening a small, specific window rather than blowing out the entire wall. You reveal just enough to achieve the intended effect, to disarm, to connect, or to convey authenticity. For example, in a high-stakes leadership moment, admitting that you don't have all the answers but are committed to finding them with the team is not a weakness. It is an act of humility and collaboration that strengthens your position as a credible leader. It signals confidence, the confidence to admit limits, which is often far more compelling than feigned infallibility. The true weak leader is the one who is too insecure to ever say, "I need help." The paradox deepens when we look at influence. People are profoundly influenced not by perfection, but by relatable struggle and resilient recovery. When you share a past difficulty and the specific lesson you extracted from it, you don't just share a story, you share a blueprint for growth. This positions you not as a flawless icon, but as a sage, someone who has mastered the depths and returned with hard-won wisdom. This kind of authentic power is magnetic and deeply influential. The key to operating in this powerful paradox is clear intention. Before you reveal anything personal, ask yourself this penetrating question: what is the specific desired outcome of this exposure? 1. Is the intent to gain a deeper, more resilient connection, to build a true ally? 2. Is the intent to disarm a potential opponent or preempt a criticism, to seize control of the narrative? 3. Is the intent to model a behavior such as resilience or ownership, to lead by authentic example? If the intention is merely to vent, to seek validation, or to offload a burden without a clear connection to a strategic gain, then you are likely falling into reactive, rather than strategic, vulnerability. True strength, then, is the sovereign capacity to choose your exposure. It is the ability to walk into a potentially vulnerable situation, not because you are forced, but because you have calculated that the potential return, the trust, the alliance, the influence, outweighs the controlled risk. You are not a victim of your emotions. You are the master strategist of your own heart. Embrace the understanding that your concealed truths are not liabilities. They are potent, emotional capital. They should be spent with the same care and precision as any significant financial investment. The person who knows when and how to reveal their authentic self is the one who ultimately controls the emotional landscape of their relationships and their life. This is the difference between being exposed and being powerful. Take a moment to consider one relationship or situation where you are currently holding back. What small, proportional truth, if revealed, would strategically shift the dynamic in your favor, not by manipulation, but by deepening the truth and connection? Let the answer be your guide toward intentional, powerful openness. Chapter 4. Emotional Mastery in the Heart's Battlefield. Staying grounded amid exposure. The transition from entrenched concealment to strategic openness is exhilarating, yet it is often fraught with tension. Even when the choice to be vulnerable is intentional and calculated, the primal fear of exposure, the ghost of past betrayals, can surge to the surface. This fear can trigger a cascade of reactions: anxiety, self-doubt, the urge to immediately retract, or the impulse to overcompensate with defensiveness. To navigate the battlefield of the heart successfully, you need more than just strategy. You need emotional mastery. Emotional mastery in this context is not about suppressing feelings or becoming cold and detached. It is about learning to regulate your internal state so that your actions remain aligned with your intention, regardless of the turbulent emotional response the vulnerability triggers. The moment you expose a truth about yourself, you may feel an immediate, potent sense of dread. Did I share too much? Will they judge me? If you allow this fear to take over, it can sabotage the very purpose of your strategic openness. The first step toward mastery is to cultivate a radical internal detachment from the outcome. When you engage in strategic vulnerability, the primary power of the act is in your choice to do it. The secondary power is in the potential deepening of the relationship. But once the disclosure is made, the response belongs entirely to the other person. You cannot control their reaction, their judgment, or their capacity for empathy. Attempting to control their response is what creates the overwhelming anxiety. To stay grounded, you must perform a psychological separation. Your value is not contingent upon their reaction. You chose to open up not because you needed their validation to survive, but because you intended to create a particular bond or strategic advantage. If they fail to meet your openness with grace, it reflects on their capacity, not your worth. A core technique for staying centered amid exposure is the practice of anchoring. When the emotional tension rises, The chest tightens, the mind races, the retreat instinct kicks in. You must immediately bring yourself back to the physical present. Use your senses. 1. Breathe. Take a slow, deep breath, counting slowly to 4 on the inhale, holding for 2 and exhaling slowly to 6. The deep exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling to your body that, despite the internal alarm, you are physically safe. 2. Ground. Feel the weight of your body in your seat or your feet on the floor. Identify 3 things you can see in the room. This immediate physical contact with reality pulls your attention out of the abstract, panicky future tripping that fear encourages. 3. Name. Internally, name the emotion you are experiencing without judgment. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling the impulse to retreat. Naming the emotion creates a space between you and the feeling, allowing you to observe it rather than be consumed by it. This process of anchoring ensures that the fear is experienced but not acted upon. You can feel the tension without letting it dictate an immediate reactive behavior, such as minimizing what you just said or apologizing for your truth. You remain the conscious orchestrator, not the frantic performer. Another vital element of emotional mastery is the acceptance of discomfort. Vulnerability is inherently uncomfortable because it signifies a loss of absolute control. We spend our lives cultivating certainty and predictability, and exposure shatters both. You must recognize that the feeling of awkwardness, tension, or even light panic is not a sign that you have made a mistake. It is simply the natural byproduct of doing something profoundly meaningful and necessary. Frame the discomfort not as a warning sign to stop, but as a signal of growth. This feels uncomfortable, which means I am challenging an old boundary and expanding my capacity. This type of mastery leads to responsive living rather than reactive living. A reactive person shares a vulnerability, feels fear, and immediately retracts, apologizes, or shuts down. They regret the disclosure and return to a hardened state. A responsive person shares a vulnerability, feels fear, anchors themselves in the present moment, and chooses their next action deliberately. They maintain eye contact, hold the silence, and wait for the other person's response with a quiet, determined stillness. They respond to the other person's actual reaction, not to their own internal panic. This stillness, this quiet refusal to break, is a monumental display of inner power. To become truly masterful, you must also be acutely aware of subtle energy shifts. After a meaningful disclosure, pay attention to the shift in the room or the relationship. Does the air feel lighter or heavier? Is the other person leaning in with genuine curiosity, or are they subtly backing away? Your physical and intuitive senses are powerful instruments for evaluating the environment. Emotional mastery means trusting this subtle, often non-verbal data more than you trust your own immediate, fear-based thoughts. Finally, master the art of strategic silence. After you have offered your piece of truth, the next powerful move is often no move at all. Allow the disclosure to sit in the space between you. The subsequent silence is where true meaning and connection are forged, but it is also where the fear of judgment is most acute. Holding that silence, resisting the urge to fill it with nervous chatter, demonstrates a confidence in the validity of your shared truth. It communicates, "This is my reality, and I am secure enough to wait while you process it." This is a profound assertion of sovereignty in the heart's battlefield. You cannot eliminate the fear, but you can neutralize its power over your actions. You are the architect of your emotional response. By anchoring, accepting discomfort, and maintaining responsive silence, you ensure that your strategic choice to be open translates into genuine power, rather than succumbing to the immediate urge to retreat. This is the practice of standing your ground on exposed terrain. Take a breath now and acknowledge any emotional discomfort you feel when considering deep exposure. Do not fight the feeling, observe it. Understand that this tension is the sign of something important, something real happening inside you. You are in control. You are the master. Proceed from this center. Chapter 5. Recognizing safe spaces, where weakness can become transformative. We have explored the necessity of guardedness, the cost of constant concealment, and the power of strategic openness, anchored by emotional mastery. Now, we must turn our focus outward. The most critical skill in leveraging vulnerability is not the act of opening up itself, but the discernment to know where and to whom that gift should be offered. Not all ground is fertile. Some environments will accept your seed of truth and nurture it, while others will simply bury it or use it to feed their own agenda. Vulnerability is not a universal currency to be spent indiscriminately. It is a potent, rare resource that should only be exchanged in sanctified spaces, relationships and environments where the risk is managed and the potential for transformation is maximized. The failure to distinguish a safe space from a dangerous one is the single biggest reason people retreat into permanent isolation. They assume their experience of being hurt by exposure is universal, rather than specific to the poor judgment of the recipient. So, how do you recognize a safe space? A relational environment where your perceived weaknesses can genuinely become transformative strengths. It begins with observing the energy dynamics and the history of reciprocity. The first indicator is reciprocity and balance. In a truly safe space, the act of sharing is not a one-way street. The other person should demonstrate a willingness to meet your level of exposure with a proportionate level of their own. If you find yourself consistently being the one who initiates the deeper, more personal disclosures while the other person remains polished, remote, or merely asks surface-level questions, this is a dangerous imbalance. True safety is built on mutual risk. When someone opens their own door, even slightly, it signals respect for the exchange and a shared understanding of the stakes. Look for the return, not just in words of comfort, but in authentic, mirrored sharing. The second key indicator is non-judgmental presence. A safe person or environment rewards your openness not with advice, pity, or immediate attempts to fix you, but with undivided, quiet attention. When you reveal a difficult truth, the safe response is a sense of grounded acceptance. They hold the tension without flinching. If the recipient immediately leaps to judgment, uses your disclosure to one-up you with a story of their own, or tries to dismiss your emotion, that space is a threat. A transformative space allows the raw truth to simply be in the room, creating an atmosphere of deep, unconditional acceptance. They understand that to be heard is often more powerful than to be solved. Third, examine the history of integrity and confidentiality. This is the non-negotiable threshold. A person who gossips about others, who has a history of exaggerating or distorting shared confidences, or who shifts allegiances based on convenience, is not safe. The safety of a relationship is built on repeated evidence of reliable ethical conduct. You need to look for proven discretion. If you know they cannot hold another person's story sacred, they certainly cannot be trusted with the sanctity of your own. Your vulnerability must be guarded by someone whose honor is demonstrably high. The fourth indicator is the focus on growth and evolution. In a truly transformative space, the conversation around your vulnerability is centered on insight, learning, and forward movement, not on wallowing in the weakness itself. If you share a deep fear, the safe partner will help you explore the source of that fear and the steps required to overcome it. They treat your weakness as raw potential, an area ripe for disciplined growth. They do not allow the disclosure to become an excuse for stagnation. They use it as a catalyst for rigorous, loving accountability. Finally, consider the feeling of expansion. After sharing a deep, guarded truth, do you feel lighter, more integrated and expanded, or do you feel a sinking dread and an urge to retract? Safe spaces leave you feeling more powerful, not less. They create a sense of inner congruence where the person you are inside is now more closely aligned with the person you are presenting to the world. If a relationship consistently makes you feel smaller, exposed in a painful way, or guilty for your truth, It is actively draining your energy and is not a safe container for your deepest self. This intense focus on discernment is not paranoia. It is the highest form of self-respect. You are reserving your most precious resource for those rare individuals and environments that have earned the right to witness it. This selective, rigorous process elevates the act of being vulnerable from a hopeful gamble to a disciplined exchange of power. Start practicing small, safe testing. Do not begin with your deepest, most agonizing secrets. Start with an emotional current event, a mild frustration, a small uncertainty about a minor decision, or a moment of ordinary self-doubt. Observe carefully how the person handles this small, low-risk piece of exposure. Do they listen actively? Do they respect the confidence? Do they respond with kindness and depth? If they pass these smaller tests repeatedly, you can incrementally increase the depth of your sharing. If they fail the small test, you have protected your larger self while gaining critical intelligence about the relationship's limits. By deliberately seeking and verifying safe spaces, you transform the concept of vulnerability. It ceases to be an act of desperate need or frantic risk and becomes an act of intentional self-donation, a calculated way to build an infrastructure of robust, reciprocal relationships that will genuinely support your growth and resilience. Take a moment to identify one person in your life who consistently meets these criteria of safety. Notice the calm, steady feeling you have when you are around them. Commit to offering a small, measured piece of your truth to this person soon, and observe how the transformative power of vulnerability feels when it is truly honored. Chapter 6. The Power of Selective Exposure. Sharing strategically without losing sovereignty. Having mastered the internal game of emotional regulation and the external skill of recognizing safe spaces, we arrive at the pivotal act, the intentional release of truth. This is where vulnerability truly becomes a powerful, strategic lever. The goal is not to become perpetually open, which is both exhausting and unwise, but to achieve sovereign power by choosing exactly what to share, when to share it, and how much to reveal, ensuring that every act of exposure deepens a relationship or enhances your influence. This process is what we call selective exposure. It is a measured, calibrated approach that ensures you maintain control over your inner life while still achieving the immense benefits of authenticity. It is the difference between a controlled release of pressure and a catastrophic breach of containment. To practice selective exposure, you must first master the distinction between information and insight. Information is factual, superficial, and often easily weaponized. Details about your job title, your bank account, your minor irritations. Insight is the deeper, psychological truth about why you value those things, why you react in certain ways, or what pattern of behavior you are struggling to overcome. A sovereign person shares only the necessary insight, the hard-won wisdom, and strategically withholds unnecessary information. For example, instead of sharing the raw, sensitive information about a past financial failure, you might share the insight you gained. I learned that my need for total control was actually my greatest liability, leading me to ignore expert advice. Now, I prioritize collaboration over command. This shared insight enhances your credibility, demonstrates growth, and is far less vulnerable to misuse than the raw data of the failure itself. You are giving the lesson, not the ammunition. The next component of selective exposure is fractional sharing. Never unload the entirety of a deep emotional truth at once. Instead, treat vulnerability as a series of small, reciprocal exchanges. This allows you to test the waters continuously and adjust the relationship dynamic gradually. You offer a small piece of your truth, a fraction, and then pause. You observe the reaction. Does the other person hold it well? Do they respond with empathy? Do they offer a fractional truth of their own? If the response is positive and reciprocal, you move to the next fraction. If the response is dismissive or predatory, you immediately close the door and retract future disclosures, without feeling the need to explain or apologize. Fractional sharing is a way to ensure that the depth of the relationship earns the depth of your exposure. The relationship's capacity to handle your truth must be proven, not assumed. Strategic timing is also paramount. The perfect time for selective exposure is often not when you are emotionally desperate or overwhelmed, but when you are centered and prepared. When you choose a moment of calm reflection to share a personal truth, it shows that the disclosure is a deliberate offering, not a plea for rescue. This subtle shift in energy, from need to gift, changes the entire dynamic. The disclosure lands with greater weight and credibility when it comes from a place of quiet strength. Consider how selective exposure impacts influence and boundaries. When you share strategically, you are subtly defining the terms of the relationship. By revealing a specific aspect of yourself, you are implicitly drawing a line around everything else. You are saying, "This is what I choose for you to see. Everything else remains private." This controlled exposure is actually the highest form of boundary setting. It communicates, non-verbally, that you are the sovereign ruler of your inner domain, and access is granted, not taken. For example, a leader might selectively share the doubt they felt before launching a major project, but only after the project has proven successful. This historical vulnerability doesn't undermine their authority. It humanizes their success. It turns them from an unreachable figurehead into a relatable mentor. They use the disclosure to enhance their story and increase their influence, all while having secured the outcome. The ultimate goal of this strategic sharing is deepening your authenticity without compromising your personal sovereignty. You are making calculated choices that allow you to stand more fully in your truth, which is a powerful magnetic force. People are drawn to authenticity, but they stay for the perceived power that guards it. When you selectively share, you offer both the genuine core and the deliberate control. To integrate this practice, start by choosing a specific person and a single, low-stakes truth you have been withholding. Before sharing it, clarify your intention. What outcome am I hoping to achieve? Connection, trust, or mutual understanding? Write down the specific insight you will share, making sure it is divorced from any unnecessary, weaponizable information. Commit to sharing only that one fraction, and then patiently observe the response. By exercising this disciplined approach, you transform vulnerability from a frightening risk into a disciplined art form. You are not simply being open, you are commanding openness on your own terms. Your life is your domain, and every revelation is an act of calculated power. Chapter 7. Aligning Heart and Strategy, Turning Emotional Risk into Advantage. We've arrived at a critical juncture, the integration of your deep emotional reality, your heart, with your disciplined, calculated approach to life, your strategy. The highest level of personal power is achieved when these two forces are not in conflict, but in perfect alignment. This is where the emotional risk inherent in vulnerability transforms directly into a tangible strategic advantage. Most people operate under the belief that the heart and the mind are separate, often opposing forces. They believe that being authentic means being soft, and being strategic means being cold. This binary thinking is fundamentally flawed and severely limits potential. To align heart and strategy is to recognize that your deepest emotions, your core vulnerabilities, are not merely feelings to be managed. They are powerful sources of information and levers of human influence. To turn emotional risk into advantage, you must first learn the practice of emotional data mining. Every time you feel a profound sense of fear, a burning resentment, or a deep, tender longing, stop and treat that feeling not as a sign of weakness, but as a piece of data rich with strategic insight. For instance, if you feel a surge of profound anxiety before a public presentation, the emotional risk is exposure to failure. But the strategic advantage is revealed by mining the data. Where does the anxiety stem from? Is it fear of the audience or fear of failing to meet your own impossibly high standard? By identifying the latter, You gain a strategic insight into your personal driver. Self-mastery is your core motivation. Now, you can strategically frame your presentation not as a performance for others, but as a proving ground for your own discipline. You transform the anxious energy into focused internal drive. When you strategically reveal a vulnerability, you are often testing the integrity of a relationship. If you share a difficult truth, and the recipient responds with genuine empathy and support, you have gained an enormous strategic advantage. A verified, high-integrity ally. This ally is exponentially more valuable than 10 fair-weather friends who only celebrate your successes. The emotional risk of exposure provided the data on their character, confirming their trustworthiness, which is a key strategic asset in any long-term endeavor. Conversely, if your measured disclosure is met with indifference, subtle dismissal, or judgment, you have also gained a strategic advantage. Clarity and preemption. You now possess the data necessary to strategically adjust your boundaries, minimize your future investment in that relationship, or preemptively guard against future betrayal. The small, controlled emotional risk protected you from a much larger, catastrophic loss down the line. You turned the interaction from a potential wound into an intelligence-gathering operation. The alignment also profoundly affects your leadership and communication. People trust leaders who are authentically invested in the outcome, not just technically proficient. When a leader shares a small, relevant vulnerability, such as the intense personal sacrifice required to reach a goal, they signal their deep, emotional commitment. This shared investment creates a potent psychological contract with the team. The strategic advantage here is unmatched commitment and loyalty from those you lead. They are now working not just for a paycheck or a goal, but for a person they feel they truly know and who has invested a piece of their heart. To master this alignment, you need to cultivate intentional resonance. Before engaging in any significant strategic move, whether it's a negotiation, a pitch, or a critical conversation, connect with the deep emotional truth behind your actions. Why does this matter to you? What is the core value you are defending? Let that genuine emotional resonance, that truth from the heart, guide your language and your choices. For example, if you are negotiating a deal, the strategic move is the hard-line position, but the aligned move is to preface that position with a brief, genuine statement about the core values that make that position non-negotiable. This term is vital to me because it allows me to protect the long-term integrity of the product and the team who built it. That is my non-negotiable priority. You've exposed the heart's commitment, which makes your strategic position feel less like an arbitrary demand and more like a necessary defense of a deeply held value. The risk of exposing your passion is outweighed by the advantage of establishing your credibility and moral foundation. This integration of heart and strategy is not about softening your resolve. It is about hardening your intention with the power of genuine feeling. It allows you to move through the world with fierce compassion, fierce in your defense of your goals, and compassionate in your understanding of the human element required to achieve them. Your emotions become the fuel for your discipline, and your strategy becomes the disciplined expression of your heart's desires. Take a moment to identify a current challenge in your life that feels emotionally taxing. Don't fight the emotion. Instead, ask, what strategic truth is this emotion trying to teach me? How can I use the raw data of this feeling to formulate a more powerful, more aligned plan? Let your heart lead you to the deepest point of leverage. Chapter 8. Systems that protect the soul, creating boundaries that enable vulnerability. The journey towards sovereign vulnerability is not a reckless leap of faith. It is an engineering project. Just as a sturdy bridge requires strategic stress points and robust supports, your emotional life requires practical systems and boundaries that absorb shock and enable freedom of movement. You cannot engage authentically with the world if you are constantly terrified of psychic injury. The goal is to build a structure that allows you to open your heart without leaving your soul exposed to indiscriminate damage. Boundaries are not walls built to keep everyone out. They are semi-permeable membranes that allow the good and nourishing to flow in, while filtering out the toxic and corrosive. They are the practical mechanisms that support your strategic decisions about exposure. If you decide to share a small truth with a new acquaintance, selective exposure. The boundary is the system that manages the aftermath and protects your energy regardless of their reaction. The first essential system is the time and energy boundary. Vulnerability, even the strategic kind, is a high-energy exchange. It requires deep focus and emotional investment. You must treat it like a scheduled event, not a casual accident. Never engage in deep emotional sharing, or listen to someone else's when you are exhausted, distracted, or operating on a deficit. By setting aside specific, undistracted time for meaningful connection, you ensure you have the necessary bandwidth to handle the emotional data and potential tension. A depleted self is a vulnerable self, susceptible to oversharing and poor discernment. Protecting your energy is the prerequisite for authentic connection. The second crucial system is the reciprocity monitor. This is a conscious mechanism to prevent the dangerous, one-sided emotional labor that leads to burnout and resentment. A healthy relationship requires a continuous, equitable exchange of care, vulnerability, and effort. Your reciprocity monitor asks, am I the only one consistently extending myself? Is the other person mirroring my depth, or are they only consuming my emotional resource? This is not a transactional scorecard. It is an integrity check. If you find you are constantly giving insight and support without receiving genuine, proportional engagement in return, your boundary signals a need to pause or withdraw until the balance is restored. You protect your soul by refusing to let it become a perpetual dumping ground for others. Third is the consequence clause. Before you engage in any significant act of exposure, you must mentally predetermine the acceptable consequences. This is the internal preparation that anchors your emotional mastery. Ask yourself, if this goes poorly, if this person misunderstands, dismisses, or even misuses this truth, what will I do? The answer should not be suffer or retaliate. The answer should be a defined, immediate boundary response. I will retract my emotional investment. I will reduce contact to necessary logistics. I will seek counsel elsewhere. By predetermining the response to failure, you remove the paralyzing shock of the potential wound, and you maintain your internal locus of control. The consequence clause turns pain into a predictable trigger for powerful, self-protecting action. Fourth, you must establish mental sanctuary zones. These are internal, untouchable territories of your mind and heart that you never share, regardless of the level of trust. These zones may hold your deepest ambitions, your most private spiritual beliefs, or the raw, unprocessed pain of old trauma. They are your sovereign reserves, the wellspring of your ultimate self-reliance. They ensure that even if every external relationship were to fail, you would still possess a core, private self that remains whole, unseen, and self-defined. Sharing everything with everyone leaves you psychologically homeless. True intimacy is sharing 90%, knowing that the remaining 10% secures your absolute self-possession. The fifth system is the vulnerability inventory. This is a routine, reflective audit of your recent exposures. After a meaningful conversation, take a moment of quiet solitude. Review what you shared and how it felt. Did the disclosure lead to greater clarity and connection? Did you feel a sense of lightness or a sense of dread? Use this inventory to calibrate your future behavior. If a certain type of sharing consistently leads to negative feelings or misuse, then that type of exposure requires a stronger boundary. If another type consistently deepens connection, you know where to invest your energy. This continuous process of reflect and refine is what moves you from reacting to past hurts to proactively managing future interactions. Building these systems transforms vulnerability from a terrifying risk into a disciplined practice. You are not simply hoping for the best. You are strategically arranging your life so that openness is safe, sustainable, and empowering. When you have strong, clear boundaries, you can afford to be generous with your heart, because you know exactly how to protect it when necessary. This is not fear masking as wisdom. It is strength built on meticulous self-care. Reflect now on your current systems. Which of these 5 boundaries is the weakest in your life? Commit to reinforcing that one boundary this week. The stronger your inner structures, the freer you are to genuinely connect. Chapter 9. Transforming Fear into Growth. How Vulnerability Builds Resilience. We have secured the borders of the self and established the systems necessary for safe, strategic engagement. Now we can address the most profound benefit of controlled openness, its unparalleled ability to build deep, lasting resilience. The fear of exposure is potent because we equate vulnerability with fatality, the sense that a disclosed truth could permanently destroy us. This chapter explores how controlled, intentional openness shatters that myth, transforming fear from a paralyzing threat into a powerful engine for psychological toughness. Resilience isn't the ability to never be hurt. It's the speed and integrity of your recovery after being wounded. When you perpetually conceal your struggles, you may temporarily avoid the pain of external judgment, but you deny yourself the opportunity to practice recovery. The concealed self never learns its true limits or its true strength because it remains untested. It is like an atrophied muscle, protected but fundamentally weak. The first way vulnerability fosters resilience is through confronting the catastrophic narrative. Much of the fear surrounding exposure is rooted in a highly amplified mental projection of the worst possible outcome. If I tell them this, I will be ruined. When you choose to share a controlled truth, a past failure, a current insecurity, a deep ambition, you are essentially conducting a live experiment to test the validity of that catastrophe. In most cases, the real-world reaction is far less devastating than the mental projection. It is often met with quiet understanding, shared similar experiences, or simple, respectful silence. This realization that the monster in your head is far more terrifying than the real people in your life is a profound, liberating breakthrough. Every successful act of vulnerability rewires your nervous system, replacing the automatic, panic-driven response with a calm, evidence-based conviction. I shared my truth and I survived. I am still intact. This experiential knowledge is the very foundation of psychological resilience. Vulnerability also builds resilience through the integration of shame. Shame is the deeply corrosive feeling that you are fundamentally flawed, whereas guilt is the feeling that you did something wrong. Shame thrives in silence and isolation. It uses concealment as its nutrient. When you bring a source of shame, a difficult memory, a past mistake, into the light through a deliberate, focused disclosure to a trusted ally, you immediately diminish its power. The act of naming and sharing a shameful truth with an accepting ear breaks the emotional spell. The shame is exposed to the air, and you realize that your trusted connection has not recoiled. They have remained. This experience teaches you that your worth is greater than your mistake. By allowing yourself to be seen despite the imperfection, you internalize a non-negotiable truth. You are acceptable and lovable, even in your wholeness, shadows included. This integration is a deep, unshakable form of self-acceptance that makes you resilient to external criticism. Furthermore, controlled openness activates your support network. No one is designed to be a completely self-sufficient island. Sharing a weakness, paradoxically, is an act of sovereign strength because it acknowledges human interdependence. When you reveal a genuine struggle, you give those who care for you the specific and actionable way to support you. You stop struggling against the weight of the concealed problem and start using the leverage of connection. This is not about collapsing into dependency. It is about strategic collaboration for resilience. A strong person knows when to delegate emotional weight. By allowing yourself to lean on others in moments of need, You conserve your own energy for the internal work of healing and growth. The resilience is built not by enduring the burden alone, but by learning how to effectively distribute the load among verified allies. To fully transform fear into growth, you must adopt a growth mindset toward all exposure. View every act of intentional vulnerability, regardless of the outcome, as a training exercise. If the disclosure is well received, you have successfully fortified the relationship and strengthened your trust-building capacity. Advantage gained. If the disclosure is poorly received, misused, dismissed, you have gained valuable, painful data about a deceptive environment, allowing you to establish a firm boundary and protect yourself from future harm. Wisdom gained. In this framework, there is no true failure, only outcomes that yield either alliance or intelligence. This reframing removes the existential threat from the equation. The fear loses its final hold when you realize that even the worst-case scenario yields a protective strategy. The journey of vulnerability, when approached with precision and intention, is the ultimate masterclass in self-trust. Each small, successful exposure confirms that you are capable of weathering the emotional storm, that you can discern who is safe, and that you possess the inner resources to recover from betrayal. You stop fearing your own capacity for feeling, and you start trusting your capacity for navigation. This internal confidence, the unshakable trust in your own strength to feel and recover, is the highest measure of resilience. Take a moment to recall a small moment recently where you chose to be open even though you felt afraid. Reflect on the outcome. Did you survive? Did the imagined catastrophe materialize? Use the evidence of your own experience to erode the power of your fear. You have already begun the work of resilience. Now make it intentional. Chapter 10. The Alchemy of Emotional Power. Turning Weakness into Strategic Influence. We have navigated the treacherous terrain of risk, established robust boundaries, and internalized the resilience that comes from tested openness. Now, the final, most transformative step is to engage in emotional alchemy, the process of converting the raw, volatile material of your perceived weaknesses and deepest emotional truths into a disciplined source of strategic influence and lasting power. This is where vulnerability moves beyond self-help and becomes a true competitive and relational advantage. Influence is not merely about persuasion. It is about the subtle, lasting impact you have on the hearts and minds of others. Most people try to influence by projecting an image of flawless competence, which is ultimately sterile and unrelatable. True, potent influence is built on credibility, and credibility is born from the combination of competence and authentic humanity, the strategic integration of your strength and your acknowledged struggles. The first step in this alchemy is to shift your perspective on what constitutes a weakness. A weakness is often simply a highly intensified human trait that is currently undirected or unharnessed. For example, a deep fear of rejection, a weakness, is merely the shadow of a profound capacity for connection and sensitivity, a potential strength. If you choose to strategically reveal the intensity of your commitment, rather than the fear of its failure, you transmute the liability. You might say, I care deeply about the success of this project because I am intensely sensitive to letting the team down. That feeling fuels my meticulous work. You have used your vulnerability, the sensitivity/fear, to bolster your professional image, the meticulous work. This is alchemy in action. Next, master the power of shared humanity. People are deeply motivated by the desire to feel understood. When you, as a person of perceived strength, choose to selectively reveal a relevant internal conflict or past difficulty, you instantly close the psychological distance between you and your audience. You provide them with a point of emotional contact. This shared humanity is the most powerful tool for influence because it bypasses logic and connects directly with trust. Consider a negotiation. Instead of simply presenting data, You might share a brief, tailored anecdote about a past, relevant mistake that taught you the exact principle you are now arguing for. By disclosing this historical error, you don't look weak. You look wise, credible, and grounded in real-world experience. The listener thinks, this person has struggled and learned. They are not an academic, they are a survivor. This dramatically increases their willingness to follow your lead, creating a strategic influence based on respect for your journey, not just your current position. The strategic influence of vulnerability lies in its ability to generate high-quality trust. There are two types of trust. 1. Contractual trust. Trust that you will do what you say you will do based on competence. 2. Emotional trust. Trust that you will act with their best interests at heart based on character. Selective exposure builds emotional trust faster and more powerfully than any other method. When you take the risk to share a truth, you are implicitly saying, I trust you to handle this part of me. This gift of trust almost always compels a return, creating a powerful, mutually invested bond. This deep, emotional trust is the strategic advantage that sustains alliances through inevitable conflict and pressure. It is the invisible force that prevents partnerships from fracturing under stress. To practice this alchemy, you must focus on the art of the relatable scar. Do not reveal the fresh wound which elicits pity and weakness. Reveal the healed scar which elicits respect and wisdom. A scar tells a story of pain endured and transformation achieved. Sharing the story of the scar, the lesson extracted, the discipline learned, the strength gained, is a strategic act that positions you as a mentor, a sage, and a leader who knows the depth of the valley. This integration is the final step in sovereign living, using your emotional data, your heart, to inform your calculated choices, your strategy, and then selectively sharing the outcome of that integration, your wisdom, to enhance your influence and connection. Your history, even the parts you once wished to hide, becomes your most compelling narrative. You have all the necessary components: the knowledge of risk, the tools of discernment, the structure of boundaries, and the practice of resilience. Now, intentionally use the rich, complex texture of your inner life to shape the world around you. Your deepest truths are not your liabilities. They are the gold reserve of your personal power. Take a moment to identify one past struggle you've overcome, a scar that has truly healed. Determine the single, profound lesson you learned from it. Now commit to sharing just that lesson with one person this week, framing it not as a confession, but as a piece of hard-won wisdom that informs your strategic actions today. This is how you transform your history into your destiny. Chapter 11. Shadows Integrated. Balancing Risk, Openness, and Inner Strength. We have engaged in the alchemy of power, transforming hidden weaknesses into strategic influence. Yet, even with all the systems and discernment in place, the journey isn't complete without addressing the deep, often uncomfortable work of shadow integration. This final stage of mastery involves acknowledging that the fear of vulnerability, the impulse to retreat, the desire for total control, will never fully disappear. It exists because you feel deeply and understand the gravity of loss. True, balanced strength is not the absence of this shadow impulse, but the conscious integration of it into your strategy. The shadow is the part of your psychological self that holds all the traits, emotions, and memories you have rejected, repressed, or deemed unacceptable. When it comes to vulnerability, the shadow holds your deepest wounds, the memories of past betrayals, and the raw, untamed parts of your ambition or dependency that you believe are too ugly or too volatile to ever be seen. If you attempt to become completely open while denying the existence of this shadow, you are only achieving a superficial, precarious form of authenticity. The unintegrated shadow remains a source of unpredictable, reactive behavior. It will cause you to snap shut unexpectedly, overshare defensively, or sabotage intimacy just as it is beginning to deepen. Mastery, therefore, requires you to turn and face the parts of yourself you have been most determined to conceal, understanding that they are not liabilities, but sources of untapped, primal energy. Integration means acknowledging the power of your darkness without allowing it to rule you. It means saying, yes, I have an overwhelming fear of being controlled, and that fear makes me fiercely independent and highly guarded. I understand this about myself, and I choose to use the energy of that fierce independence to set sovereign boundaries, rather than build impenetrable walls. The balanced approach to vulnerability relies on three integrated pillars. 1. Acknowledge the risk, the shadow's wisdom. Your guardedness is a form of deep wisdom rooted in survival. It is right to be cautious. Do not try to shame this fear away. Instead, listen to what the fear is telling you about the specific situation or person. The shadow gives you raw, intuitive data about potential threats. Your commitment here is to honor the warning without succumbing to the panic. 2. Commit to openness, the heart's desire. Your drive for connection and depth is essential for growth. It is the fuel for a meaningful life. You must maintain the courage to extend trust, even in the knowledge that it carries risk. Your commitment here is to intentional action, to choose connection when the strategic advantage is clear, regardless of the shadow's insistence on safety. 3. Maintain discernment, the sovereign choice. This is the bridge. Discernment is the rational, tactical mind that balances the shadow's fear with the heart's desire. It analyzes the environment, checks the systems, boundaries, reciprocity, and makes the final, conscious decision. The risk is acknowledged, the value is high. The systems are in place, therefore, I proceed with a measured disclosure. When you integrate the shadow, you stop fighting the urge to be guarded. You realize that your ability to hold back is just as much a part of your power as your ability to open up. You become comfortable with the internal tension between these two forces. That tension is no longer a contradiction. It is a dynamic balance, the source of your profound centeredness. This process enables a state we call resilient presence. You are present in the relationship, fully engaged and authentically sharing, but you are also resilient because the knowledge of potential pain, the integrated shadow, is factored into your decision-making. You are not blindly trusting, you are trusting with open eyes. This makes you formidable because you are neither naive nor paralyzed by cynicism. Integration allows you to look at your past wounds, your most vulnerable moments, not as shameful liabilities, but as badges of initiation. They are the crucible through which your current wisdom was forged. By accepting them as a fundamental part of your identity, you strip others of the power to use them against you. What is already owned and acknowledged cannot be weaponized. This chapter is a call to radical self-acceptance. You are a complex being, defined by light and shadow, by profound needs and ferocious self-protection. The mastery of vulnerability is not about achieving perfect light. It is about learning to live powerfully in the full spectrum of your being. Your inner strength is no longer a fragile outward presentation, but a deep, internal structure that has made peace with its own flaws and vulnerabilities. Take a moment in quiet solitude to acknowledge a part of your personality you often try to hide or correct, a deep insecurity, a powerful resentment, an overwhelming need. Name it without judgment. See the power contained within it. Now, commit to using the energy of that shadow trait, not to conceal, but to inform your self-protection and your intentional, strategic engagement with the world. This is the act of turning lead into gold. Chapter 12. Sovereign Vulnerability. Living with Courage, Emotional Intelligence, and Strategic Openness. This journey has been one of deep descent and powerful ascent, an exploration of the hidden dangers of the heart and the discipline required to master them. We began by respecting the vital necessity of the guard, navigated the cost of concealment, and built the strategic and emotional infrastructure necessary to engage authentically. The final stage is not a destination, but a way of being, sovereign vulnerability. This is the state where you live with complete authenticity, fully grounded in your inner power, and operating with a high-level strategic intelligence that transforms potential risk into transformative connection. To live in sovereign vulnerability is to master the constant, dynamic balance between courage and caution. It means that you no longer reactively fear exposure, nor do you recklessly pursue openness. Instead, every disclosure, every connection, and every boundary is a conscious, self-directed choice. You are the sovereign ruler of your emotional domain, and access is granted only by your decree. The foundation of this sovereignty is integrated emotional intelligence. This is more than just recognizing feelings. It is the capacity to use your deep emotional awareness as a continuous stream of actionable intelligence. You use your feelings not to determine your value, but to determine the safety and integrity of your environment. When a relationship feels subtly off, your internal tension is no longer a source of anxiety. It is a clear diagnostic signal telling you to slow down, ask penetrating questions, and reduce the depth of your sharing. Your emotional radar becomes your most reliable strategic tool. This sovereignty is expressed through courageous discretion. Courage is no longer a matter of simply being brave and letting go. It is the disciplined choice to take a measured, calculated risk in pursuit of a specific, high-value outcome. You have the courage to extend trust, but you do so with the knowledge that your system's boundaries, reciprocity checks, consequence clauses, are prepared to manage any failure. Your discretion ensures that you are never exposed beyond the limits of your resilience. You are operating from a position of strength because you have already accounted for and accepted the cost of failure. The application of sovereign vulnerability fundamentally changes the nature of your relationships. You move beyond seeking mere approval or acceptance and aim instead for profound resonance. You look for those relationships where the strategic sharing of your truth, your insight, your resilience, your ambition, is met with an equally high level of integrity and investment. These relationships become force multipliers, enhancing your power and protecting your energy because they are built on the bedrock of mutual, hard-won truth. They are no longer sources of anxiety, but reservoirs of strength. Furthermore, this state eliminates the need for any internal artifice. The massive, hidden energy cost of maintaining a curated self vanishes when you allow your truth to be managed by strategy and boundaries rather than by fear and concealment. You release all the energy previously tied up in performing. This reclaimed vitality is your ultimate power source. It flows directly into your purpose, your creativity, and your capacity for action. You become unstoppable because you are no longer fighting yourself. Living in sovereign vulnerability means you are no longer defined by what others think, what you possess, or what you fear. You are defined by your fierce self-ownership and your unshakable alignment between your inner truth and your external choices. You accept the complexity of your soul, the shadows, the wounds, the powerful ambition, and you present yourself to the world not as a perfect product, but as a masterpiece in progress, openly acknowledging the cost of the work and confidently asserting the value of the outcome. The journey culminates in this integration, the head, the heart, and the instinct all working in concert. The fear-driven impulse to hide is acknowledged but overridden by the strategic intelligence to connect. You have completed the alchemical process, transforming the volatile risk of the heart into the disciplined magnetic power of authentic presence. Your task now is not to continue seeking answers, but to lift the questions. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice this mastery. Every choice to open or to hold back is a test of your discernment. Embrace the ongoing dynamic tension between protection and connection. You are whole, you are prepared, and you are sovereign. Go forth and wield your truth with the precision and power it deserves.